Hi everyone, so in this video we're going to talk about neutralization reactions. And the neutralization reactions we're talking about are all to do with what happens to acids. So acids that we've been looking at, and if you haven't already watched the video introducing a pH scale, then that's something you should do first. And you should have this page in your booklet filled in with the colours, and then understanding and remembering from year 8 what we talked about with the pH scale. So when you're writing pH scale, if you're writing it properly, it's important to write it with a small p and a capital H. Because the acids that we're talking about in school, the acids that we look at, they all have one thing in common. They all contain hydrogen. So there's 3 acids in particular that we're going to look at. We're going to look at hydrochloric acid, and its formula is HCl. We're going to look at sulfuric acid, and its formula is H2SO4. And nitric acid is HNO3, okay? And again, these formulas are the ones that you should fill in your book on page 13. So the names are there, and it just needs you to fill in the formulas on the table there. In the reactions we're looking at today, we're looking at things that will neutralise these acids, things that the hydrogens will react with, and then they'll become neutral. So something will react and join with the chlorine, something will react and join with this, it's called a sulfate ion, and something will react and join with a nitrate ion. So hopefully by the end of this video you'll understand the neutralization reactions we're looking at. Now one of the things, just before we move on to neutralization reactions, we need to finish page 13. So one of the other things that you looked at in year 8, whenever you were doing about acids, is alkalis. So hopefully you've heard of alkalis before. And there's 3 alkalis on your page at the bottom of page 13 that we're just going to fill in the formula of. So the formula for sodium hydroxide is NaOH. The formula for calcium hydroxide is CaOH2. I'll explain these formulas and where they come from whenever I see you again. And ammonia solution, you're going to fill in the formula for ammonia is NH3. So fill those in your book. Okay, so now we're coming to look at the different neutralization reactions that take place whenever acids are neutralized. And there are 4 different types. And you can pause this video at different points whenever you're going through your booklet to help you fill in the next few pages. So the first reaction, or the first neutralization reaction I want to talk to you about is what happens when an acid and an alkali react together. Now you'll see up here we've got another word for an alkali is a metal hydroxide. So remember we said that the acids all had hydrogen in them, and the alkalis, remember the formulas you wrote down the last page, the sodium hydroxide and the calcium hydroxide, they all contain this OH group. So for example, if we had our hydrochloric acid and our sodium hydroxide, then what forms here is we get a salt plus water. So if we look at how the salt is formed, this is in your booklet as well, but it goes through it here. So the rules for how a salt is formed, the first part comes from the name of the metal present in the alkali. The second part depends on the acid. So in that example I was showing you, if we look at it in words, we've got hydrochloric acid, and the name of the acid is hydrochloric. And then the name of the metal part that's in the alkali is sodium. So the first part of it comes from the metal that's in the alkali. So the first part of the salt, so this here is our salt. We get sodium from the metal and we get chloride from the salt. And depending on which acid we use, we get a different name for the salt. So if we look at it here, so hydrochloric acid, if we use hydrochloric acid, our salt that's formed will have the name of a metal in it, and then the second part of the name of the salt comes from the acid. So a salt formed from hydrochloric acid is something chloride, so like sodium chloride or potassium chloride or magnesium chloride. So the first part of the name comes from the metal that's present, the second part comes from the acid. So if it's a hydrochloric acid, the second part of the salt is called chloride. If it's a sulfuric acid, then the salt is a metal sulfate. And if it's a nitric acid, then the name is a nitrate. And it's always the name, oops, it's always the name of the metal in here. So it could be like sodium, magnesium, zinc, etc. We're going to do some examples in this video to show you. Okay, so this is summarized in this bit, and this is in your booklet as well on page 14. Okay, it tells you the name, how to figure out the name of the salt. Okay, so if we look at our examples, then if we have an acid plus an alkali, we get a salt plus water produced. If we have an acid plus a metal oxide, so for example, our metal oxide could be sodium oxide, could be magnesium oxide, could be potassium oxide, zinc oxide. It's the name of the metal plus oxide after it. If we get that reacting together with an acid, we get a salt plus water. In our third one, if we get a metal plus an acid, we get salt plus hydrogen, and it could be any metal. Now what I use to remember this is MASH. So metal plus acid gives you salt plus hydrogen. So MASH, metal plus acid, gives you salt plus hydrogen. And then our fourth, this is our last type of reaction. If we have an acid plus a metal carbonate, we get salt plus water plus carbon dioxide. So again, it could be any metal with a carbonate after it. You'll see it in an equation, that's what it will look like. And the way I remember this one is it's got carbonate there and it's got carbon dioxide produced. Now, hopefully what you've noticed in all of these is that the one thing that's produced in all of these reactions is a salt. That's why it's really important when we're trying to figure out how to name the salts, that we get it right with the metal that's present and then the acid, because for each of these we've got a salt, and for each of these we've got a metal somewhere. So we've got a metal hydroxide, got a metal hydroxide in our alkali, we've got a metal oxide in this one, we've got a metal on its own here, and we've got a metal carbonate. So remember, the first part of the name for the salt comes from the metal, and the second part comes from the acid. So let's try some examples. I'm going to put them up. We've got a few examples to work through. I want you to maybe go and get a pen and a piece of paper and come back, pause the video now, go and get that, and then we'll try some examples and see how we get on. So our first one is sodium hydroxide plus nitric acid. Now what I'm going to do is over in the right hand side here, I've got our 4 equations with what each of them are that we've just gone through, and then how to name it here is just a reminder. So we need to first decide which equation is it. Is it 1, 2, 3 or 4? So this one here has sodium hydroxide in it, so that tells me that it's belonging to equation 1, where it's metal plus acid gives you salt plus water. So that means we're going to have a salt plus water formed. Okay, so then we need to figure out the name of the salt. So remember, the first part of the name of the salt comes from the metal, so I find the metal here, and the second part comes from the acid. So the name of the salt produced here is going to be sodium nitrate plus water. Okay, let's try our next one. So here's our next one. Remember, let's try and decide which equation is it. You can have these open in your book because they're easier to read. I know it might be quite hard to read in the video. So pause the video, see if you can figure out what the products are. So this one is, we've got a metal plus an acid. So it's going to be equation number 3 with MASH, metal plus acid, gives us salt plus hydrogen. So we've got metal plus acid gives us salt plus hydrogen. So let's figure out the name of the salt. So the metal is magnesium, it's going to be the first part of the salt, and the acid is hydrochloric. So the name of the salt produced here is going to be magnesium chloride, and we get hydrogen produced. Hopefully you got that one. Okay, ready for number 3. So again, pause the video and have a go. So which equation is it? Is it 1, 2, 3 or 4? So this one we've got a metal hydroxide plus acid. So it's going to be equation number 1. We're going to get salt plus water. So let's figure out the name of the salt. We've got our metal is potassium and our acid is hydrochloric. So the name of our salt is potassium chloride plus water. Okay, hopefully you got that one. How are you getting on with these? Do you think you've understood them okay? Let's try another one. Okay, so let's have a look at this one. We've got zinc carbonate plus hydrochloric acid. So the first thing, remember, let's see, is it equation 1, 2, 3 or 4? So we've got a zinc carbonate here. That tells me it's number 4, so we're going to get salt plus water plus carbon dioxide formed, aren't we? So again, the only thing we need to figure out is the name of our salt. So we circle the metal, we underline our acid. So then that tells us we've got zinc chloride plus water plus carbon dioxide. Okay, hopefully you got that one as well. I'm just going to do 2 more with you and then see how you get on. So the next one. So is it equation 1, 2, 3 or 4? So let's have a look. We've got a metal oxide plus acid. So that tells me it's equation number 2. So we're going to get salt plus water produced. So the name of the salt then. So we circle the metal, underline the acid. So we're going to have iron sulfate plus water. Okay, and our last one then, see how you get on with this one. So is it equation 1, 2, 3 or 4? We've got calcium carbonate here. So that tells me it's equation 4 with a carbonate plus an acid. So we're going to get salt plus water plus carbon dioxide. So find the metal, we circle our metal, we underline our acid. So the name of our salt is going to be calcium sulfate plus water plus carbon dioxide. Okay, so hopefully you've understood those. The main thing is how we name our salts and then figuring out whether they're equation 1, 2, 3 or 4. That would be the other important thing in this video. So if you're stuck on anything, just rewind it and have another watch and send me a message if you have any questions.